What is the central theme of the poem The Female of the Species? Female solidarity and shared emotional experiences. According to poem, whom does the speaker prefer to confide in during moments of despair? Female relatives and friends. What emotion is prominently expressed when the poem mentions ungratefulness of children, despair and disappointment? How does the poem portray men in the context of emotional conversations as unable to provide emotional solace? What everyday concerns do the women discuss in the poem? The rate of rice, price of tea, and the scarcity of cheese. What does the mundane conversation about rice, tea, and cheese symbolize? The woman's economic hardships and everyday realities. What kind of bond is shown among the women in the poem? Emotional camaraderie and silent understanding. Why is the poem titled The Female of the Species? To emphasize women's unique emotional experience and solidarity distinct from men. What is the poem's tone? Nostalgic, intimate, and empathetic. Which literary perspective is notably expressed in the poem? Feminist perspective. What literary device is used in the phrase "a man is no use whatever then"? Hyperbole. How is the repetition of everyday terms like rice, tea, and cheese an example of literary device? Symbolism indicating domestic reality. The poem is written in which form? Free verse. Which literary technique best describes how women communicate in the poem by discussing simple topics but conveying deeper emotions? Subtext and indirect communication. The line "you sit them and talk, she sews and you sit and sip" incorporates which literal device? Imagery portraying routine life. How does the poem use perspective? Second person narrative. The poem's language can be described as simple and conversational. What does the scarcity of cheese metaphorically refer to? Sacrifices and hardships in family life. The poem's structure mainly consists of a single stanza with free-flowing lines. Which literary term describes the emotional tone of the poem? Mood. Who are included in the group the speaker turns to for an emotional support? Mother, sister, school friends, and female relatives. What is the poem's message about female relationships? They provide deep emotional understanding and support. What is the role of silence and indirect talk in the poem? They convey a deeper emotional sharing about women. How are the first love and first child, a girl and your child, significant? They highlight female lineage and bonding beyond immediate family. How does the poem imply about women suffering in families? It is silent, hidden, and often unrecognized. What societal role is implicitly discussed in the poem regarding women, caregivers, and emotional supporters? Why do the women in the poem not confide in men among their deepest emotions? Men do not understand or share these emotional experiences. What does the act of sieving symbolize in the poem? Domestic routine and tradition. What emotional experience is shared between the women but never explicitly discussed? Love, despair, and the ungratefulness of children. How does the poem treat the concept of motherhood as complex, involving both love and despair? How is the poem feminist in its outlook? It highlights women's emotional strength and the importance of female support need networks. Which famous author does the poem allude to with its title, Rudyard Kipling? How does the poem contrast with Kipling's The Female of the Species? Deshpande portrays women as cooperative and emotionally connected, not aggressive. What is the significance of mentioning the girl with whom you went to the school? It emphasizes long lasting female relationships. What social class do the women in the poem most likely represent? Middle class housewives managing domestic affairs. What role does culture play in the routine activities mentioned? It reflects traditional roles of women in Indian society. What is the function of talking in the poem? Emotional catharsis and bonding. The poem communicates women's emotions primarily through shared silences and mundane conversations. What type of imagery is predominantly used in the poem? Domestic and everyday life imagery. How does the poem portray the idea of emotional strength? Through quiet endurance and shared understanding. The phrase "you want then your mother or sister" primarily shows desire for familiar and trusted female company. The poem shows that woman's communication style is indirect and nuanced with deep empathy. How is the speaker's voice best described? Intimate and conversational, addressing the reader directly. The first love in the poem referred to her daughter, symbolizing continuity of female experience. What does the poem suggest about the emotional labor of women? It is invisible and often unappreciated. Why are children described as ungrateful? Because children do not understand or appreciate their mother's sacrifices. What mood is created by casual talk of tea and rice prices, camouflaged sadness, and shared experience? The poem's free verse style helps to reflect natural, everyday conversation flow. The poem's use of you as the addressee does what? Creates a distinct, direct emotional connection with the reader or listener. What is the overall effect of the poem's understated language? It poignantly conveys deep feelings through simple conversation.